Picture this: seasoned hikers, skilled and experienced, setting off into the wilderness, only to vanish without a trace. Think it's impossible? These 5 stories will prove you wrong. What forces are at play in these remote landscapes? Join us as we unravel the chilling tales of hikers who disappeared in the great outdoors. It was the early morning of August 1st, 2018, when Samantha Sayers left her apartment in Seattle and set out on a journey that would forever alter the course of her life. At 27 years old, Samantha, whom friends called Sam, was a fit woman with a love for the outdoors. Sam could take on any challenge. That Wednesday, she planned a solo hike on the Vesper Peak Trail in Washington State's North Cascade National Park. This particular trail was a challenge for even the most seasoned hikers, its rugged terrain making it treacherous even in the face of experience. But for Sam, it was just another day in her adventurous life. She had hiked the Vesper Peak Trail before. Even more, she grew up going on camping trips quite often. Hiking was in her blood. Before leaving her home in Seattle, Sam sent a quick text to her boyfriend, 33-year-old Kevin Dares, telling him she loved him and letting him know she was going to be back home by 6 p.m. that evening. She left her apartment at about 8 a.m. and drove her blue Ford Fiesta along the Mountain Loop Highway to the Sunrise Mine Road, where one of the paths to the summit of Vesper Peak begins. She parked her car and then signed her name in the Forest Park Registry. She was a calculated individual who didn't like to take unnecessary risks. Sam then started the more than 4,000-foot climb, which lay ahead of her. There were other hikers on the path that Wednesday. Sam wasn't someone you could forget easily, and the other hikers could feel it. On that sunny day, the woman was dressed in a pair of gray workout leggings and a sports bra. She carried a hiking pole in each hand and had a black backpack. Most noteworthy, however, was her bald head, a pattern of stars which had been designed by her mother, Lisa. Sam had been diagnosed with alopecia back in high school and made the conscious decision to always shave her head, since she found wigs to be uncomfortable. At some point during the hike, Sam stopped to have lunch alongside another hiker. She enjoyed her sandwich she'd packed for lunch, then made it to the summit at about 3 p.m. There, she took in the breathtaking views and spoke for a little while to others at the summit. She also checked her phone. She left soon after, choosing to descend the mountain's southwest side. By 7:15 p.m. that night, Kevin Dares, Sam's boyfriend, was already on the road. He knew Sam very well. He knew she was always prepared, that she always stuck to her timeline or let him know if she was going to be late. Kevin had waited anxiously for her to return for about an hour before leaving to search for his girlfriend. He stopped at a gas station along the way to get a flashlight. It was getting dark, and even though he enjoyed hiking himself, he wasn't half as experienced as Sam. He knew climbing the Vesper Peak Trail was going to be hard, but he had to do it. Kevin found Samantha's car still parked at the trailhead. Hours later, Kevin eventually fell on the treacherous trail, breaking his flashlight in the process. It was pitch black, and it became clear to Kevin that he needed help. Desperate and without options, he called 911. The official search for Samantha Sayers began at about 1 a.m. It became one of the most extensive in Washington State's recent history. At first, a team of volunteers and a helicopter equipped with infrared technology scoured the area. Authorities spoke to several witnesses and were able to figure out the timeline of Sam's hike up until her disappearance. In the meantime, Kevin took to social media, where he created a Facebook page and launched a GoFundMe campaign to raise funds for the search. Sam's mother, Lisa, found out about her daughter's disappearance through Facebook and flew to Seattle immediately after. After 22 days of searching for Samantha, with the help of 70 searchers on foot, 14 dog teams, witnesses, and helicopters, authorities ceased the efforts. The budget for the search had run dry, and with no leads, authorities concluded that Samantha Sayers had likely died in a fall. As of 2021, No trace of Samantha Sayers had been found. Sam's mother, Lisa, believes her daughter is still alive somewhere, perhaps a victim of human trafficking. What do you think happened to Samantha Sayers? October 14, 2017 was a sunny Saturday in the Duckhole Lake track area at Strathplain in Tasmania, Australia. Bruce Fairfax and Louise, his wife of many years, were on one of their little adventures. They loved bushwalking, a passion they've shared since the beginning of their journey together, no matter the hardships. At 66 years old, Bruce Fairfax was a retired teacher who suffered from Parkinson's disease. His symptoms had started a few years before. Bruce was now on daily medications, which helped him lead a normal life and gave him some of his mobility back. That's how he was able to go on long hikes. As long as he got his medication, Bruce was able to follow Louise's lead, but he was no longer able to navigate himself. On that Saturday, the couple chose to hike the Duckhole Lake Track, a lush trail in southern Tasmania, which had always been a favorite of theirs. This particular hike was supposed to be like any other, a peaceful escape into the dense forest they both loved and to a flooded sinkhole. The couple was accompanied by their beloved dog, Tessa. They set off early that morning with Tessa by their side. At some point during the hike, though, they decided to separate. As such, after agreeing to meet up at a lakeside picnic site, Louise went on ahead, while Bruce and Tessa stayed behind, hiking at a mellower pace. As time passed, Louise waited at the meeting point, expecting to see her husband and their pet appear through the trees at any moment. But they never did. Concern turned to worry and then to fear. Something was wrong. Louise was sure of it. She knew she had to raise the alarm and get help. The search for Bruce Fairfax was extensive and reflected just how loved and respected the man was. Police, SCS volunteers, and fellow hikers combed through the dense forest. They used helicopters with thermal imaging technology to scan the area from above. They used a specialist dog to search the bushland area. A team of divers searched the lake but found nothing. Louise was desperate. Bruce wasn't only her husband, he was the father of her 2 daughters, her soulmate, her best friend, and the love of her life. She knew many others in their community felt the loss deeply. During his career as a teacher and deputy head at Church Grammar School in Launceston, Bruce dedicated his life to educating and inspiring countless students. Despite the best efforts of the search teams, no trace of Bruce was ever found. The only clue was Tessa, the dog, who was discovered wandering the trail alone. If only she could speak. The search eventually wound down, but in 2023, 6 years after Bruce's disappearance, the investigation took a new turn. The authorities decided to reopen the case and treat it as a criminal investigation. Police explained that the change in designation would allow them to approach the case with fresh eyes and new resources, but they claimed the decision wasn't prompted by any tips or new information. They plan to re-interview witnesses and conduct another search of the Duckhole Lake track area. As of 2024, Bruce Fairfax is still missing. Patricia Wu Murad woke up early on April 10, 2023. The 60-year-old, whom friends called Patty, was on vacation. She had left her home in Connecticut and was now on a solo hiking adventure in Japan, exploring the ancient trails of the Kumano-Kodo. It was meant to be one of her final treks before meeting up with her husband, Kirk Murad, and going on a trip to Spain in June. Patty was no stranger to adventure, especially if said adventures involved going on treks along breathtaking trails. She had embarked on countless journeys on her own, from Spain to Jordan. She loved meeting new people on these routes. She loved exchanging stories and forging connections that would last a lifetime. Patty was a trusting person, which helped her make new friends everywhere she went. This time she was exploring Japan's spiritual trails. She aimed to hike from the Mondokoro guest house in the little town of Higashiomi to Osaka, where she was going to meet up with some friends from Connecticut. She also had a room booked at a hostel in Osaka. It was a long journey, one that would take about 9 hours on foot. That's why Patty woke up at 7 a.m. on that Monday. She was excited for her hike and couldn't wait for it to start, even though she had been experiencing some upsetting toe pain, which she had told Kirk about 3 days before. After waking up, Patty went to check out of the Mondokoro guest house. The guest house's owner, a respected member of the local community, offered to walk Patty to the trailhead. He always helped tourists start their journey. Soon enough, they arrived at the trailhead and they parted ways. Patty made her way through the dense forest and was soon out of sight. Hours later, in Osaka, Patty's friends started to worry. It was already late in the evening and there was no sign of the woman. When she failed to check into her hostel, alarm bells started ringing. Japanese authorities were notified about her disappearance. Searches began immediately, with Japanese police, volunteers, and even American rescue teams combing the trails and surrounding areas. Patty's husband, Kirk Murad, was notified about the woman's disappearance on April 13th, after the police's initial 72-hour search concluded. Kirk and the couple's children traveled to Japan to take part in the search themselves. They were also able to hire their own search and rescue team to supplement the search efforts. Helicopters buzzed overhead, drones scanned the terrain, and sniffer dogs scoured the trail. But Patty was nowhere to be found. Despite everyone's efforts, there was no sign that Patty had ever entered the trail she was supposed to hike. The lack of evidence made Japanese authorities call off the official search on May 7th. Mountain Works, a local rescue team, held out a bit longer, but they stopped by the end of May. Patty had disappeared into thin air. Kirk and one of his daughters, Murphy, decided to attempt to track down cell tower data, but even they knew the lack of evidence was discouraging. They even stopped accepting donations through the GoFundMe campaign they'd set up when Patty disappeared. Kirk Murad now believes that something sinister happened to his wife. He thinks Patty might have accepted a ride from someone she shouldn't have. He believes she was abducted and never even began her hike, but there are no suspects. It was about 5:30 a.m. on October 15, 2023, when Ingrid Colleen Lane told her husband, Louis Scuderi, that she was heading to a Buddhist retreat center. Ingrid had been there many times before, especially when she needed some time away for her mental health, or simply a place where she could relax and recharge. At 37 years old, Ingrid, who lived in Albuquerque with her husband and their cats, was a bioengineer who worked in scientific research. Ingrid's job was important and demanding. That's why she needed a place where she could find solace and spiritual growth. The woman left her home soon after talking to her husband, driving away in her black 2019 Subaru Impreza hatchback. From here, the details get murky. She drove for a while before hitting Forest Road 144 in the Yemez Mountains, one of the most remote and wild areas in New Mexico, 100 miles north of Albuquerque. Soon after, Ingrid realized she had a flat tire. She flagged down a group of hunters and asked them for help with the tire. The men kindly offered to take Ingrid to a nearby town, but she declined vehemently. The woman told the hunters she was trying to hike to the Buddhist retreat, but she didn't mention which route she planned to follow. The hunters helped Ingrid inflate her tire and then left. 3 days later, on October 18th, Ingrid's husband Louis reported her missing. It wasn't unusual for the woman to go without contacting anyone for a day. 2 days without contact were a little out of the ordinary, but not disturbingly so. By the third day, Louis Scuderi was sure his wife needed help. The police found Ingrid's black Subaru on the very same day. The car was abandoned and had a shattered window. They made an even more baffling discovery inside the car, where they found a burner phone still in its unopened package. Louis was equally confused by this discovery. He had no idea why his wife would have purchased something like that. As such, the burner phone raised troubling questions about what might have happened during those 3 days. Police then found out that the car's rear window had been shattered at the moment Ingrid spoke with the hunters. Even more, the Zen Center confirmed Ingrid had been there 3 days before at about 9 a.m., but they also said she'd left soon after, without disclosing her plans. With so many confusing details, authorities could do nothing but search for the missing woman. To make matters worse, the location where Ingrid vanished was remote, high elevation, and far beyond cell phone range. When Ingrid's twin sister and mother arrived in New Mexico to help with the search, a local sheriff told them this was an easy area to get lost in. Search and rescue teams combed the area, but the trail went cold quickly. Dog teams lost Ingrid's scent, indicating that she might have gotten a ride further into the mountains. Ingrid's family was thrown into turmoil. They brought a four-wheel drive truck to access the rugged backcountry, hoping to cover ground that search teams couldn't reach. Ingrid's twin sister took to social media, asking for help and seeking advice. They were especially concerned since Ingrid had been known to suffer from sleep issues and a rare lung condition that worsened in cold weather. Her mental health was also a concern, but the family believed Ingrid still had plans and couldn't have gone up the mountain without meaning to get back. But there were no leads, no suspects, and no answers. As of 2024, Ingrid Colleen Lane is still missing. On September 27, 2023, Chad Palanche set out to conquer a new route in Rocky Mountain National Park. The 49-year-old man was armed with his extensive trail running experience and an unquenched thirst for adventure. Chad, who was from Fort Collins, Colorado, was no stranger to the park. He had tackled Long's Peak over 30 times, but this time he wanted to go on a different route, one that would challenge him more than any other before. This route would take him across the Continental Divide, through steep, unforgiving terrain, on and off trail. It was unlike any other he attempted before. Chad parked his car at the North Inlet Trailhead on the west side of the park and then started his journey, armed with his experience and his endurance. Around noon that Wednesday, on September 27th, Chad wrote and hit send on a quick text message saying he was near the summit of 13,135-foot Mount Alice and about 7 miles from the Bear Lake area. His adventure was going well, or so he thought. That short text would be the final communication anyone received from him. The next day, on September 28th, Chad Palanche failed to check in as expected. He was reported missing, prompting the National Park Service to launch an extensive search and rescue operation. They knew the facts. Chad's vehicle was still where the man had left it, at the North Inlet Trailhead. This was a sign that his journey had begun as planned, at least. They also knew his proposed 28-mile route was a difficult one. It included a mix of established trails and off-trail sections through steep talus slopes, something even the most experienced hikers knew to be wary of. Authorities also knew Chad had personal navigation equipment, but his device wasn't designed for emergency assistance, which further complicated the search effort. Other than that, authorities knew they were looking for a 5'7" man, likely wearing a black ultralight jacket, black running shorts or leggings, and a gray fanny pack. But were these details enough to help them find him? The operation to find Chad Palanche was massive. More than 77 rescuers, including 3 dog teams and a state drone team, scoured the park from both the air and the ground. The National Park Service closed off a portion of the park to help limit scent distractions for the dog teams. But the search wasn't without its challenges. The weather turned, hindering search efforts, with snow, ice, and strong winds hampering efforts at high elevations. There wasn't much to do. Even aerial reconnaissance was difficult due to a thick cover of clouds. On October 6, though, the weather changed again, and helicopter teams were able to conduct aerial reconnaissance, capturing photographs of the steep, rocky terrain. This in turn allowed ground teams to navigate some of the more difficult areas. But the search efforts, as massive and impressive as they were, proved futile. Authorities decided to suspend the search on October 10, 2023, after coming up dry on clues to the man's location. Chad Palanche is still missing.